Welcome to the Intuitive CEO podcast, a space where we explore the future of leadership at the intersection of AI, intuition, and psychology. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can create truly happy workplaces, harness the power of human connection, and redefine success in our fast-changing world. I'm your host, Gemma, Master Intuitive Psychology Coach, founder of The Happy Workplace, and CEO of HubGem, where I've seen firsthand how culture, people-first leadership, and technology can combine to build award-winning organizations. Today, I'm joined by Sarah McDevitt, Senior Director of Partner Strategy at HubSpot. HubSpot is a world-leading customer platform that helps businesses grow better. Sarah is not only a powerhouse in the tech and partner ecosystem, but also a deeply human leader with a passion for the intersection of AI and emotional intelligence in business. She recently spoke at Inbound, HubSpot's annual conference that brings together business leaders, innovators, and change makers to explore the future of marketing, sales, service, and technology. Sarah continues to champion the role of relational and emotional intelligence in shaping how we work and lead. She has been a huge support to me personally in my journey as CEO of HubGem, and I've always admired her wisdom, lived experience, and grounded human-first approach. She is quite honestly one of my favorite humans, and I can't wait for you to hear her insights. Sarah, hi.
Hi, Gemma. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Really excited to dive in today. So I would love to hear a little bit about leadership from you. What does leadership look like now, and how is it evolving as we look to the future?
Yeah, I think leadership in the past was very much a dictatorship a lot of the time. Leaders made decisions. They didn't sometimes have to explain those decisions. Humans have evolved. Humans ask questions. I think human motivation has changed as well. Previously, and it's still the same for some people, I'll admit, right? So like some people are very motivated by money and maybe they don't ask too many questions. But I think we have generations coming up that are motivated by something different. And that motivation is purpose. So as a leader, if you're not able to connect your mission with purpose for employees in the future, I think you'll struggle. There will always be people in the world who are operated based on like incentives. Actually, when you peel all of that back, as I even learned early in my own career, we need something beyond finances really to motivate us. We need purpose. We need connection. We need to know that what we're doing in the world matters and that we're having an impact. And I think leaders have to evolve skills to make sure they're connecting the dots. And good leaders do all the time. But you also see poor leadership where that is not connected. So I think, again, it goes back to the importance of understanding humans, what motivates us, thinking about that deeply beyond business metrics, because in the future, when a lot of task-driven stuff is done by the AI, you're going to have to make more time and effort to get to know humans.
I mean, I love all of that. And I completely agree, though, in my own experience, that's been the thing that makes it all worthwhile, right? It is the humans, whether it's customers or team members. The metrics, I do agree, will only get you so far. So you've spoken a few times now on relational and emotional intelligence as some of those key skills. Could you dive into those a little bit? What are these and how will they shape leaders?
Yeah, so I believe that relational intelligence is the ability to build, sustain, and grow really, connection that we have with other humans through certain signals, right? So what I've done is I've kind of tried to make this practical for people to understand what I mean, because I think we all innately know that relationships matter. Like everyone knows that. Your kid knows that at school. Everyone knows it. But in a business sense, it's like, how do you train people to actually focus on that? And so the 5 signals I have are awareness, presence, empathetic structuring, connection capital, and bringing the humanity that really no other human can bring, or AI. And so if we talk about those a little bit more in depth, each one of them, for me, awareness is a tale as old as time, which is the ability to read the room. We see this all the time and we can't quite quantify why someone is really good in a room. We're like, God, they're like fantastic in a meeting. They really know how to connect with people. Often that's because they're very good at reading the room. So in a sales conversation, that's understanding, kind of the emotional shifts in the room, shifts in energy. They know when is a good time to push forward with a sale, for example, or when today is not the day. And it's we often sometimes, I think, as parents, when our children are not fully cooperating with us, we kind of say, "Not today. Today is not the day that's going to happen." And so, as humans, I think it's a really, really important skill to have because we use sometimes the opposite of us as, the kind of general statement of people making statements that are tone deaf. And that's often because they just don't have the ability to read the room for loads of different reasons. And I see it all the time. And I think it's one of the skills that AI will find very difficult to replace because, as I've said many times, the truth is some humans aren't very good at reading the room. Um, and, it's catching contradictions, right? So the difference between what someone says and what their actual body language is saying. In Ireland, we have a saying that Irish people are fond of saying, which is when someone asks you to do something you absolutely don't want to do, your response is often, "Oh, I will, yeah." And that is the exact opposite of that you will. So, it's things like that. Now, culturally, it changes. Obviously, there's cultural nuances in different cultures. Also, reading the room depends on the rooms you're in, and it depends on the people who are in the room. So, what I would say is that women have been reading rooms for hundreds, if not thousands, of years differently to men, because when we walk into a room, as a female, you often have different permissions in terms of the way you're expected to act or what people expect of you. So I think women have been doing this for a long, long time. And then, of course, the people of the global majority, as I say, have had to go in and read dreams differently for much longer because there is nuances there that a lot of people don't understand. So I think, Gemma, I was saying this about my son being at school, having been hit by another child, understanding that child was neurodivergent and, he didn't respond to the child. But the school called me and said that, a child had hit him. And when I asked him after school, I said, "What happened there, Lockton? What happened?" He goes, "Well, I fell and I tripped and I started to cry really loudly." And he wasn't enjoying the way that I was crying. So he just was communicating with me that he was not enjoying that. And so he understood instinctively that it wasn't about he wasn't, hitting him as a point of aggression. He was actually hitting him to let him know that he wasn't enjoying his particular communication style. But he had the emotional intelligence to read that situation and respond appropriately. So this is what I'm talking about. It's not just reading the room is like, just read the room, everyone. It has many, many facets and many, many layers, and everyone reads the room differently and everyone has a permission to enter rooms differently. So I'd say that's the first one is awareness. The second one is presence. And I think this is one of the things that has been devalued most in our kind of digital world. And it's really the idea that if me and you are having a conversation right now, Gemma, I'm not on my phone reading texts, answering a Slack, trying to multitask. I'm really listening and engaging with you. And we can tell, right? Especially in the virtual world, we can tell when someone isn't paying full attention to us. They're just looking for the cues to go, I hear you, but they don't really hear you. And often that can also be driven by it's something I was very aware of as in my entire life, really. I think we've talked about this many times before that I have phonetic dyslexia, which means I really struggle with turning the sounds into letters. And so, taking notes for me is not a thing. I can't do that. If I tried to put energy into taking notes, I'm definitely not listening to you because I am trying to figure out what sound that letter or what letter that sound is. So I learned quite early on, the best thing I can do is be fully present, is to listen to the other person because I will hear them. I will take away what they need. It will allow me to ask much deeper questions because if I'm truly listening, I'm able to ask deeper questions. But when people are taking notes, and I understand some people, their particular actual, they're the opposite to me. Their way of assimilating information is to take notes. I completely understand that. But it's also about the way the person is perceiving you. in terms of your connection with you. So if they feel like, oh, I don't know what they're doing there, are they multitasking? They don't know you're taking notes, right? So it's about being fully present. And I think this is actually one of the superpowers of AI combined with humanity. When we think about note takers, for me, they're the best invention ever because you can really deep dive into things and you have the backup of the AI who's going to take notes for you. So presence for me is like being fully there in the presence of someone, whether it's digitally or physically. And when it's physically, it's closing the laptop. It's putting away the phone and like really connecting with them. Then I would say like empathetic structuring is for me like, something again I do with humans all day long. It's about accountability, but balancing that with care. Because I often think that, we sometimes skew too far onto the care side where we're not holding people accountable. We almost feel awkward about saying, hey, I'm showing you respect and I deeply am listening and I'm deeply caring about what you're saying. At the same time, we have a contract with each other to make sure that we're accountable to each other and that we are holding the line. And that's actually the most productive way to get work done. So, I often say like, if you're, if you're going to engage with humans, you probably need to have some rules about how you're going to engage with those humans to make sure that you're both on the same page. Because actually not having that accountability is what leads to problems down the line because everyone is so busy being nice to each other and, supporting each other that nothing's getting done. But like empathetic structuring really, is bringing both the human side and then the accountability of actually getting the work done.
People thrive as well with those boundaries. In my experience in business, if you take say line management of let's say I've got a team member, of course that being empathetic and fully present is key. But actually, people also want to know where they stand, and there's some safety in that. That expectation being there and that boundary being there, like then we all know where we stand. So yeah, I think that's a really powerful one, whether it's customers, team members, whoever it is.
It starts quite young, Gemma, because you'll know as a parent, right, that I will know as a parent kids feel comfort in structure and understanding what's expected of them. When things are all over the place, they don't know what's next. And that can often, impact behavior. And I would say that's in us from quite a young age, and it doesn't really change. But it's also making sure that when the accountability is followed through, that there is connection with reward there. So the reward is often the outcome, or it can be like joint successes. I think it's particularly important when we talk about how AI is going to change the world because, you know, making sure that the humans know like, hey, you still have a role here, yeah? And it's still be measured and you're still accountable to that role. And so even if you're using AI to amplify what you do, what you bring to the party is still important. And so you still need to make sure that you're delivering on your role in this amplified world. So I think it's increasingly important. The other thing as well, I suppose, is it gives people a clear sense of what's expected of them when AI is taking the task-driven stuff. If they're going, oh well, if AI is over there doing everything, like it's this, it's taking my job. That really is placing the blame on the AI and not really putting accountability on the human to figure out where they add value. And a lot of us, well, I think understand where humans will add value, but AI can't be an excuse for people to say, now I have something else to blame for the reason I can't add value. You can add value and you need to be accountable for the value that you can add, if that makes sense. And I think it's a really important thing to focus on. The other one for me is from a business context, which I think is the most important one, is a term I call connection capital. And for me, that is, when you think about like relationship with customers, or even sometimes I speak to partners and they will say the deal fell through because the POC left, or, they're going to change platforms because the POC left. That to me is the thinnest tether into a business. It is, you're always going to be open to disruption there because you haven't like gone and embedded yourself deeply enough in a company from a relationship point of view. And so what I would say is that for me, connection capital is about mapping out who all the stakeholders are in the business and finding ways to add value beyond your contractual obligations with kind of that point of contact. but it's also investing time, spending time with that contact, having conversations that don't seem particularly efficient, right? I would say, like, sometimes I've had conversations in business that by any modern metric, they'd say 80% of the conversation was completely inefficient and had no value, but that's not true. So what I mean is like really getting in there and having those conversations. And if you do, um, you then find yourself being called on as an expert by that customer for things that are outside the scope of what you potentially were originally engaged to do. So spending the time is really, really important. There is like going beyond the contract and adding value, not in a way that's going to bankrupt you, to be clear. I'm not saying giving away stuff for free, but there is often knowledge and value and insight that you have that you can give to customers as a value add that doesn't cost you a penny. And so, like, I would think about doing that. And then the last thing for me is bringing the humanity that no AI can bring or other human, right? The reality will be a different in the future between, you know, a human and a great human. In a business context, humanity is great in general, and we all have different skills. But I'm talking about in this particular context for business. So, lived experience is something I also talk about. And maybe, Gemma, for me, there is life in this old dog yet, because maybe I just have enough lived experience to be of value. I do obviously think about the graduates not getting those jobs that we did, which was maybe data input or maybe like something that we worked our way up. And of course, the problem with that is if we don't have humans working their way up, then when the humans that are up there move on, you have a short in terms of the talent. So that's something we all need to be aware as well. But what I'd say is that um, humans bring a lived experience that is really focused on the unpredictability of humans, and we are very unpredictable. And I'm not sure AI is always going to be able to cope with unpredictability, but also we will have situations in the future where we have to balance humanity with ethical question decisions. And I think, that's where humans are really important in this is being able to balance between the kind of like very data point decision making and things that are particularly ethically complex, if that makes sense.
I think it's a really interesting thing to navigate because, if we take the businesses or maybe the older approach of profits and metrics only, then I can see, how AI, you just have pound signs in your eyes, right? Like, look at all the streamlining here. But actually, if we don't have good human leaders and good human connections, then it falls apart. It feels like a very different world. So I'd be really keen to understand. Obviously, you're very connected to the partners in the HubSpot ecosystem, and there's partners all around the world, and these are all business leaders, right, running their own companies. How are businesses using AI and human-centered leadership together in ways that you've seen are working well? Like, what is it that those people are doing with the relational and intelligence, emotional intelligence, but also how are they harnessing the AI alongside that?
Mm. I think the honest answer at this point, Gemma, is that we've turned on the tap of AI and we're all trying to catch up. And the human answer to that is that we have a lot of humans trying to understand how this all fits together, right? And I think it depends on the leader. If you have a leader who's particularly technical, that assimilation of AI and what AI can do is a much simpler thing for them to understand. The caution I have a little bit is making sure that you don't automate yourself into oblivion, or using AI because once AI becomes table stakes for everyone, then we're all the same. And I sometimes talk to partners and I say to them, make sure you don't automate away or AI away the thing that made you unique and was your competitive advantage to start with. Because the business that partners are in, when we have two partners who are, competing for a piece of business, and all things being equal, things are pretty much the same in terms of they're going to do an implementation, they're going to offer technical services, they're going to use the wonderful platform that is HubSpot to solve for the customer. there is what it comes down to is really who does the customer feel that they're going to have a good relationship with. And when I worked in agencies many years ago, there used to be a stage in some of the pitches called a chemistry session. And the chemistry session was literally us all getting together in a room and deciding whether we liked each other. And that was probably like a two-way thing. And so I think, chemistry sessions and that idea of chemistry will be so important in the future because, again, all things being equal and we all have the same thing, the thing that will be different is us. And so what I would say is when I think about the leaders in the ecosystem at the minute, they are in going through a rough time like everyone else. They're trying to figure out where AI fits in the world. There is a lot of excitement around AI, which is brilliant. We have some leaders who are maybe on the other spectrum who are going like very human focused and maybe not moving fast enough with what AI can do and they will be disrupted. I think like the sensible people in the middle are looking at their business processes today, figuring out where we can leverage AI to drive efficiencies around task-driven work, and being like thoughtful about, how they can inject that in their business 100%. I think that's a sensible thing to do. And then I think the other one is like really thinking again about how you become a human-centered business. That, for me, AI is just a tool. It's another tool. It's a thing that you will put in your business to make yourself efficient and drive that bottom line in terms of profitability. But the real art is going to be figuring out, do I have enough humans? Too many humans? Because the reality as well is we are in the business of being in business and being profitable. And there is a balance of like how many humans you need versus like the AI tools you're using. So I think like really understanding and getting down to the brass tacks of that is going to be so, so important for leaders. But right now it's a lot, right? It's a lot. Like Gemma at Inbound, we announced like 200 product updates, right? So leaders are also trying to figure out how does that impact our services? What are the services and the service revenue that Loop has created, for example? Because to me, Loop is a fantastic revenue model for partners because it looks at the reality that, in business relationships, it's not one and done, right? It tends to be like a cycle of relationship where more opportunities come up, things change, and you help customers adapt to those changes. So I think there's like tons of opportunity, but it's early days yet as people try to figure it out. There's certainly people who are very focused on the tech. But I would argue that AI is going to democratize the idea of technical in the future, right? And so maybe where you know, you could use technical as your USP and you could be technical and you didn't really need to be like, you know, not to insult anyone, but you didn't need to have like a personality because, you had the authority of technical. I think those days will, in the future, it'll become less of an excuse because, again, AI will allow partners to productize some of their services and, everyone will become more technical or maybe the idea of what technical means will change and we'll be trying to help humans navigate the change.
I love that. I love that there seems to be some, we're all discovering it together here, but a beautiful intersection of humans and AI where, I am as excited about AI as many other leaders in the HubSpot ecosystem and beyond. And the technology itself is incredible. But also the rate of change is accelerating, even just in the last couple of years. Even just the features announced in HubSpot and every other platform we use as well. Like it's the rate of change. Now, as humans, change is or can be very unsettling for us, right? Humans and change. So we have to feel very safe psychologically to be able to navigate that change. I wonder, do you have any thoughts on that, on this psychological safety and how people are going to navigate this rapid changing environment? Because it's unprecedented, right?
hmm hmm I think that goes back a little bit to empathetic structuring, right? Which is this train has left the station, right? We know that you are afraid and we're here to support and help you and help you navigate through that change. And I think like as business leaders, what we need to do is give people a really clear structure of how to learn, engage with AI, understand where AI fits in their lives, understand how it's going to fit in your business. So people have some clarity as about what their role is and what the AI's role is, right? So that's like on the business side. But the accountability part for the humans as well is realizing that this will not stop. So if you're going to hide under the desk and say, "Oh, this will never take off." And I remember people when the internet was like, that's how old I am, Gemma. When the internet was taking off, and people were like, "It'll never catch on. It'll never catch on." And so I think if you're sitting there going like, "This is I'm not interested in this. I'm afraid of it," you have to take some accountability for yourself, for your professional career, for everything in the future in terms of your growth. AI is another opportunity for professional growth. So even if you're saying, I'm terrified, I don't want to look stupid, we all look a bit stupid these days. Let's be honest. AI is making us all look silly. But and that's okay. Like, let's embrace that. But one of the things I love is even in my own team in HubSpot and in broader in HubSpot, every day someone will come and tell me some cool use case for, an AI tool I've been using, but clearly have not seen its full potential. And they'll show me a trick and I'll be like, whoa. And I think like that's the way to approach it in terms of curiosity, is to share those things openly, but know that you can't just throw your hands up and say, this is ridiculous and AI is going to get it all wrong. And, let's do it the traditional way. These are gone, right? Your job now is and all of our jobs is to be shepherds to our customers, and to our employees, to help them navigate the change, and give them the supports and structure to help them navigate the change, but also call people out when they are burying their heads in the sand, because that's not a path forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of this comes down to the culture within an organization. And so, what, from your experience at HubSpot and beyond, what do you think really makes a workplace happy in today's world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because happiness is a very individual pursuit. I don't think that you can, when I think about my own, what makes me happy and what makes one of my peers happy, they're very different things. And so often, I have a 6-year-old who sometimes when he gets frustrated with me, he will say, you're not making me happy. And my response to him is always like, it's not my job to make you happy, right? That is your job. That's your job, and that it will be a pursuit for the rest of your life, is to make yourself happy. Because if you're waiting around for other people to make you happy, it's not going to happen, right? Because it is so, happiness, like grief and so many other emotions, is a tailor-made suit. And so what I would say is we have to create the conditions to support people's happiness as employers from a cultural perspective. And, when I think about like what makes up happiness for me, for example, it is things like the support to explore new things without fear, right? So like I would say that's something that I'm very lucky. I have a wonderful boss in Angie O'Dowd. If you want to talk about someone who has empathetic structuring, this is the lady, right? She is, she gives balance and support, but she absolutely holds you accountable. She's definitely the inspiration for that particular signal. So I think that's so important. But she creates like the environment to be curious and to learn, right? She also creates an environment where I am not afraid of making a mistake that's backed up with curiosity. But sometimes we make mistakes, and we don't want to make the same mistake on repeat. I mean, and I don't think anyone enjoys that. We should learn from our mistakes. But I don't making a mistake based on trying to innovate, because that's supported. And I think that's broadly true at HubSpot as well. Certainly like from the interactions I have in HubSpot. So I think like that's another condition of happiness. But also for me, it's like making sure that I set my own boundaries, right? So whether that's like for home, And, sometimes I have days where I'm like, God, I'm doing so well at work. I must be a really crappy parent and partner, because, how can these two things be true, right? That I feel like I'm doing well at work, and you can't be good, you can't be all places all the time. And so I think boundaries are important because they're obviously part of my happiness, is making sure that I'm feeling that I'm having the time to give at home as well. And actually AI and Amplified AI has played a big role in that, because I'm more organized now. I'm more like documenting stuff, like better at able to do handover notes, for example. So when I go off on my holidays, I'm feeling like I can be fully on my holidays and be happy because I've used AI to make sure that everyone has the information they need while I'm gone. So like that's another good example. But the conditions for happiness for me as well is I know that I go and have a conversation, like about anything. If I was feeling overwhelmed. So I think as a leader, it's like creating those safe spaces for people 100% so they can share who they are. Another massive thing for me, and I do think this is very unique to HubSpot, I'll be honest with you, because I don't necessarily see it reflected in the world in general. But as a member of the LGBT plus community, I really feel like I can bring my whole self to work. So I can talk about my family, I can talk about my kids, and I don't feel like I'm othered or different, right? And that's a huge, I think, achievement for HubSpot culturally, that like there's so many diverse people here in HubSpot. And I think, like, for the most part, I can't speak for everyone's experience, obviously, but I think for the most part, you can come and bring your whole self. So I think that's like super important. Obviously, it's a great place to work. There's so many benefits in HubSpot. So obviously that's part of your happiness when you're not worrying about other things. Um, so for me, they're the conditions of happiness. But for other people, they're being left alone to do their work because they're introverted, for example. Well, it's getting a slack from their boss to say, great job today, but they don't want the public, celebration. So it's very different for different people. And I think that's the first step to, helping people be happy, is to recognize, one, there is a shared accountability in it. They're responsible for their own happiness. And your job is to create the conditions to help them.
Yeah, they're individuals, right? Every human will have their own, as you say, their own map of what happiness looks like to them. And when we come to work, one thing that's really been a huge part of my journey is not trying to be somebody at work and somebody at home. Yeah, having kids, that's also part of me. I'm still me when I'm at work. So I think bringing your whole self to work and being able to do that in a way where you feel you'll be accepted. I have been in environments in the workplace where I was almost apologizing for the fact that I also had a life outside of work. And that doesn't feel nice. And so I think that recognition there, that everybody is an individual, everybody brings something and wants something slightly different for their happiness. But ultimately, only so many hours of our week are spent at work. And what else can we bring? I love hearing in my team at HubGen, I love hearing what lights people up outside of work as well, because that's, wow, I never knew that about you. And actually, you find so many little bits then of transferable skills and ways that you can really help to harness them as an individual. So yeah, I do agree. Happiness is completely individual. And there's lots of, I guess it goes to show how the culture of a workplace is so multifaceted, right? It's not just here's a list of perks that we offer. It's not the beanbags in the office. There's a little bit more to it than that.
Absolutely. Those perks mean nothing to some people and everything to others, though. And that, of course, is the challenge for culture teams everywhere. And I don't envy their job because it's a very, very difficult job.
Okay, so as we approach the end of our conversation today, I would love to end on some, let's say, some words of wisdom. So, what is the one thing that you would like leaders to remember about humans and AI as they move forward?
Well, so if you say the words of wisdom, I think I would apply something that is kind of a mantra of mine in life. And my father passed away about 16, 17 years ago at this point. And, when he was dying, he died, he was dying for 9 months and we had to care for him at home. And, during that, you obviously take opportunities to have conversations with people and say the things that you don't want to say. You don't want to leave anything unsaid. And I remember saying to my father, did we turn out like you hoped? Are you happy how we turned out? And he said something to me that, I apply this pretty much every day. He said, my biggest, he said, I want you to be great people, not because you did a great thing, but because you did the things that needed to be done. And so for me, leadership, AI, adoption, anything like that, that is a series of tasks that we achieve step by step. There is no one big thing that's going to cause a shift. There is no one big thing in leadership that you can do. Leadership is a number of small things that you do every day, whether that's showing up and, at the start of a one-to-one and saying to someone on your team, how are you really doing? Right. Or if it's sending someone like, here's, I know you're struggling and you're trying to balance, your work life. Here's a really like quick, AI tool that's going to like make that more efficient and take some mental load off. That's the thing to do. Whether it's like giving a customer like one small bit of value that you don't want to give them because it's out of the contract, but that it is going to add up to a stronger relationship. So, as the saying goes, we are a sum of our parts, and leadership is also like those one by one, 1 + 1 + 1. And that is what adds up to greatness as a leader, in my opinion.
Love that. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. And I'm sure listeners will have got so much from your words of wisdom. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Gemma, for having me.